genuinely curious, how many years was Kobe Bryant considered the best player in the NBA? Because a lot of his run in the 2000s is in the gray area just due to the fact of he only has one MVP. And when he was putting up his most monstrous numbers, he was losing in the first round or he was missing the playoffs. But I've sort of broken it down into a list. I'm going to start in the 1950s and go all the way to the present NBA. Now mind you, hindsight is 20/20 in this. The fact that I get to make the list now and look back on past generations, past years, and I know who won the championship, I know who won the awards, I know who was first team all NBA, things of that nature. I will be using that as a component for deciding who's the best player at that year. And my last point before I get into it, you are not the best player in the league if you lose in the first round or your team doesn't make the playoffs. But let's get into it. Starting in the 1950s, if you happen to watch my most influential players video, shameless plug, click right here. You know where I'm going with this. From 1950 to I'd say 1954 was George Mikan. Was easily the most dominant player throughout that time period. Won 3 NBA championships, 3 scoring titles, and 2 rebounding titles, being the first dominant big man in the NBA. Now from 1955 to 1959, George Mikan passed the torch to Bob Pettit, 2-time MVP, 1-time champion, 2-time leading scorer. But I'm going to just keep it there, short and sweet with the 50s. But now as we move on into the 60s, from 1960 until 1963, the best player in the NBA was Bill Russell. This will be a larger video in the future because I understand a lot of people write off Bill Russell, especially when they look at his statistics, and more specifically his scoring average. But what gives him the edge over Wilt Chamberlain for me is that throughout these 4 years, Bill Russell faced Wilt Chamberlain 2 times in the division final round and 1 time in the finals, all of which he edged out Wilt Chamberlain on his way to win the championship. Not only that, but Wilt Chamberlain had several seasons throughout this time where he lost in the first round. And even in 1963, where he averaged 45 points and 28 rebounds, missed the playoffs entirely. And mind you, in 1963, there was only 9 teams in the entire league. But as I said, that's another video for another day. But I do believe Wilt Chamberlain held the throne of best player in the league from 1964 until 1969. I started in 1964 because that was his first finals appearance. Now he did lose to the Celtics that year, but that proved to be the jumping off point for his career, and where he began to learn how to play within a team aspect while also dominating the game, picking and choosing his spots, not being so ball centric, and would get over the hurdle of the Celtics and win the championship in 1965 and with the Lakers in 1969. Now as we get into the 70s, this was a strugglesome time for the NBA. In 1970 specifically was an unpredictable year. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had just came into the league. Wilt Chamberlain was injured this entire year. But in 1970, I have Jerry West as the best player in the NBA, as he led the Lakers in being the only player in NBA Finals history to win MVP in a losing effort, losing to the New York Knicks in 7 games. But now as we get in the bulk of the 70s, 1971, 1972, I have Kareem as the best player. But from 1973 till 1977, Dr. J was the best player, not in the NBA, but in basketball. A lot gets swept under the rug with how dominant Dr. J was due to the fact that he played in the ABA. But one thing that gets swept under the rug when you compare Kareem's dominance to Dr. J's is that after the 1971 championship Kareem won with the Bucks, Kareem wasn't even making the playoffs. And if he did, he was getting bounced out in the first round. And even not even making the playoffs in years he won MVP. But I'll keep it short there because, as I said, that's a video for another day. But I also have Kareem reclaiming the best player in the league from 1978 until 1980. In between that time period, he would win a championship. And believe it or not, the championship in 1980 was over Dr. J and his Sixers. But I do believe that's where Kareem's run as best player in the NBA ended. And from 1981 till 1983, Moses Malone had a run of being the best player in the NBA, winning 2 MVPs, having 2 finals appearances, and 1 NBA championship run with the Sixers and Dr. J. From that point forward is when we enter the Magic and Bird era. But from 1984 to 1986, I have Larry Bird as the best player in the NBA, 4 finals trips, 3 MVPs, 2 NBA Finals MVPs, but his run would be stopped by Magic Johnson in 1987, going all the way until 1989. Now this is a little gray area because I imagine a lot of Jordan fans consider Jordan the best player in the league starting in 1988. But for me, what gives Magic the edge is the playoff runs. Because to be honest, at this point, you're just splitting hairs between Jordan and Magic. I know Jordan had the historic year in 1988, but he did eventually lose to the Pistons that year. And I give Magic the edge lastly in 1989. Because in all honesty, if he had not gotten injured in the finals, it was entirely possible the Lakers could have completed the three-peat. Magic will win 2 championships, 2 MVPs, 3 finals appearances, but would eventually have to pass the torch to Michael Jordan in the 90s. I think this pretty much goes without saying. From 1990 to 1993, Michael Jordan was the best player in the NBA. 3 championships, 2 MVPs, 4 scoring titles, and 3 finals MVPs. And then obviously his run ends in 1994. Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon would hold that title from 94 to 95, winning 2 NBA titles, 2 finals appearances, 2 championships, 1 MVP, but would also have to give up that title as Jordan came back 1996 until 1998. Again, 3 championships, 3 finals appearances, 2 scoring titles, and 3 finals MVPs. And as we know, he'd go on to retire. In 1999 is pretty much a toss-up year from this point. But I give the edge to Shaq over Tim Duncan, even though Tim Duncan would go on to win the championship alongside David Robinson. And we all know Shaq would carry that title all the way until 2002, is where I believe Shaq's dominant run as the best player in the league ends. 1 MVP, 3 NBA championships, 3 NBA Finals appearances, 3 NBA Finals MVPs. And as I said earlier in the video, this is where the NBA isn't entirely clear on who the best player was. But from the year 2003 to 2007, I have Tim Duncan as the best player in the NBA. Within that time period, he has 1 MVP, 3 finals appearances, 3 championships, 2 NBA Finals MVPs. And I imagine a lot of NBA fans bypass his dominance throughout this time period. His stats don't really jump off of the stat sheet. A similar stigma that people attribute to Bill Russell. Now this is where I believe Kobe's run officially starts as the best player in NBA. I say from 2008 to 2010, Kobe was the best player in the NBA. And yes, I know LeBron won 2 MVPs throughout that period. But Kobe gets the edge again due to his playoff success. Now again, I understand a common argument is LeBron didn't have the supporting cast similar to Kobe Bryant and his Lakers during this run. But nonetheless, 2008 was definitive for me. Kobe would win MVP, lead the Lakers to the finals. Although they would lose, he was still the best player in the NBA at this point. 2009, I'd say I doubled down on that. 2010 as well, as Kobe would win 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs, and 3 finals appearances throughout this time. But I do say LeBron takes that title in 2011 and holds it all the way up until the present NBA. Throughout this time period, LeBron will reach 7 NBA finals, win 3 NBA championships, 3 NBA finals MVPs, along with 2 MVPs. But as I said, you can expect more of an explanation on a few of the players, especially in relationship to Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Dr. J, Kareem, and even Kobe and LeBron in the future. But comment, let me know what you think, especially pertaining to the Kobe Bryant era. When do you think Kobe was the best player in the NBA, and why? Subscribe if you're new. Make sure to hit the like button if you like videos of this kind.